dalla certei, лишь очи печала глядели, а голос тогда зазвучал, как звон утоленной свирели, как Марья играющего. Не сон твой понравится тонкий, и смех твой задумчивый вид, а смех твой огромный, звонкий, с тех пор в моем сердце звучит. В часы одинокие ночи люблю я стали прилечь, я вижу печальные очи, я слышу веселую речь. И грустно так засыпаю, и в грезах навидных сплю. Люблю ли тебя я не знаю, но кажется мне, что люблю.
Dígríomh go léir a cóide agus tá fáilte ród. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my very special guest today is the wonderful opera singer, Judith Mok, who's now living in Dublin. For many years, Judith has lived in Dublin, but Judith is originally from the Netherlands. Hello, Judith.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm also an author.
That's right. You're many things, Judith.
I started my career as a writer at the same time as my singing career, so I've just always written as well.
Well, tell me, Judith, about your early life, and about we'll start, I suppose, with your singing, because you were considered the Wunderkind. I hope I pronounced that right in Danish, but it's Wunderkind in German.
Yeah, Wunderkind. Yeah, but that's actually German. But no, it's just that I was, I sang an entire Mozart role in an opera in the Magic Flute, actually, when I was 13. And then they suggested I do an audition. So I went to the Royal Conservatory in The Hague when I was 14, which was a bit crazy because you're supposed to go in there when you're 20 as a singer.
And that's really like Juilliard, isn't it? It's comparative with Juilliard.
Same level of school, yeah. Same level. So I ended up graduating when I was 20, and then I left for Paris, where I started my career. So
beautiful France, beautiful Paris. Was it absolutely glorious there, Judith? Living there. I mean, I've only ever been there as an entertainer, as a dancer, as a tourist, if you like, but always had dreams of living there.
Well, I lived there for nearly 8 years, but I was raised in the south of France, so I feel as if it's my, strangely enough, well, obviously I've been living in Ireland for 20 years now, but it feels like my home, because I was very small when we moved out of Holland to France, so French would have been more my first language for many years than Dutch. So.
And your parents would have been described, or I saw it described as bohemian aristocrats. Isn't it?
Well, yes, it's a strange story. There is an aristocratic background which we only discovered because there is a very beautiful library at the back of the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam, which is one of the most beautiful synagogues in the world. And it has no electricity, it has 10,000 candles. It's famously, when it's lit up, it's something else. It's a massive thing. And they have all the papers of the Sephardic Jews, so the Jews who came from Spain.
Yeah.
Excuse me about the ambulances. I'm on the route in Dublin to James's, so we have a lot of sick people coming by. Uh,
God.
um,
Constant reminder of confinement.
yes, exactly. So um, there was during the occupation a Nazi officer who thought that it would be interesting to keep the synagogue and the library with all the papers of the people who had fled from Spain to Holland. And, you know, the Dutch were very welcoming. And in 1492 or in 1500. So the papers, I have papers for my family, for my father's side. My real name, well, my name is Mok, but the family name is de Sola. It's a Spanish name. And we discovered that they went to France and they bought a title and they became,
Aristocrats.
they were always very pretty high up. I mean, for example, one of my great grandfathers was the first physician of Queen Elizabeth I in England.
Yeah.
So I discovered a lot about my family. But my father was a very leading poet and prose children's book writer in Holland. He was one of the leading literary people in Holland.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you took after him. I mean, was it natural that you were going to be, did you think it was natural that you were going to be a writer, but you certainly were going to inherit the creative genes one way or another, somewhere along the line?
My sister became a judge, so it was nothing like that. I mean, we were just expected to, you know, develop our mind and have an opinion and think and, you know, learn stuff. But we weren't expected to be anything. That was just me. I just always, from age 4 onwards, I just, you know, I danced and I sang, and so
And you danced, or rather you sang for His Royal Highness William Alexander and his wife, Queen
I sang for them. I was a wedding press when they came back from their honeymoon. I gave a gala concert for them. Yeah, I also sang for the Spanish King and a lot of royalty.
That's the only thing we have in common in that respect. I danced for the Crown Prince and Princess of Japan. When I solo performance, and when I researched you and I said, oh, at last we have something really in common. I get my claim to fame. Yeah. But it was a great privilege to have been asked. I'm sure it was the same with you. Actually, a colleague of, or rather a very, very good friend of mine, Dr. Michael Casey, he was involved with the Irish Entrepreneur magazine, and they organized an event for the victims of the tsunami in 2004, 2005. And he invited you to perform at it with Dervla Collins.
Yeah.
And the Right Honourable Garrick Brown was there, and Michael was saying to say hello to you and that you were absolutely a hit on the night or on the day.
Oh.
That you were absolutely
Thank you.
Fabulous. But it was on in the Mansion House in Dublin.
Yes, it's a good while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good while ago.
Excuse me, I have to walk because I have to let a very naughty cat out.
Have you a cat?
I have 2 cats and a dog and a horse.
Oh, and you're living in the city. Where does the horse go?
In the stables.
Oh, is there? Oh, okay. It just looked like you were out in the right in the middle of the city.
I am in the middle of the city. I'm in Portobello.
Okay. That must be wonderful to have a horse. I had 3 dogs up to the other day, and what sadly my 13-year-old, who I absolutely adored, I had to put to sleep, and it just, Judith, it broke my heart. It just, to hold her before she died, you know, to hold her as she was.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. My dog is quite young still, but
I have 1 2-year-old, so you know, it's just absolutely horrific. But tell me, Judith, at what stage did you realize, or did you always know that your father was a Holocaust survivor?
To both my parents.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I always knew because I had no grandparents and no uncles and no aunts, and so we knew that there was nobody around.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
So we were raised with death, you know. We just knew that that was it. There was the four of us, and but my father had a lot of both my parents had a lot of friends who had been in the camps, and so and it was a very lively. We had a very lively family, very lively. There were lots of artists coming in and out, and a lot of them had numbers on their arms and so on. So we knew that
They've
there
been
had,
in Auschwitz.
there had been terrible things happening, but we weren't allowed to read about it until we were teenagers. Our
Do you think?
parents, our
Do you think
parents
that's a good thing?
protected us. Yes, I think they protected us because it was bad enough, and obviously they had their moments where they never talked about it, and I don't think they talked about it enough. My mother talked about it a lot more than my father.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was different for her. Um,
Did your dad write about it?
yeah, oh
Yeah.
God, my father published 84 books.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking is that, I mean, I'm thinking Anne Frank, when Anne Frank was asked, she said she found it easier to write than she did to talk. And she was very quiet and reserved, and she found it easier to put what she was thinking onto the pages. And I'm a bit like that myself, because she said she could look at what she'd written and reevaluate it, and she could make it perfectly clear what she wanted to say. Whereas if she was actually to speak it, it wouldn't come out anyway the way she wanted it to come, and people would misunderstand her.
My father was from 1907, and he was a very established author by the time the war started. So, I mean, obviously he wrote about it, but as a writer, not as a person.
Yeah.
I mean, Anna Frank was not a writer. She was a
Diarist.
girl. Yes.
Child. Yeah.
Very, very talented. But God knows what would have become of her. I mean, she might have become a writer, or she might have, developed into something completely different. She's in my story on RTE. There's a story about her and her father. My play that was on,
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
So there's a whole chapter about her and her father coming to visit us and so on.
Really?
Yeah, because she was in the camps with my aunt, who was a concert pianist, and who they died together. So her father brought my father letters from his sister. So I met her, Anna Frank's father, twice.
Did you?
Yes, but that's in my. It's in the.
Yeah, it's it's funny the way our lives paths cross, and you never realize just the impact of meeting a certain person in your life until many, many years later, and you realize that those people have become part of history.
That's it. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying in the play. That to me, it was just Otto Frank, a man who brought letters, and then I was 5 years old. So, and then obviously later I became aware that he was Anna Frank's father and so on.
Yeah.
And then when I was a teenager, I read her diary.
Yeah, her diary was extraordinary. I mean,
yeah,
and absolutely extraordinary. But I mean, I've seen your writing, and I just think there's a poeticism, I think, to your writing. There's a sense of it's not clinical. It's not. To me, it's very, very creative.
Well, I have
creative.
I have published 4 books of poetry. I'm a poet.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I have a 5th book coming out in about a year's time.
So when you came to, what was it that made you decide to come to Ireland?
Well, I'm married to an Irish writer.
Yeah.
And he kind of wanted to go back to his own language, and he also wanted our daughter to be in her own language.
Yeah.
So we moved from Amsterdam to Dublin, which wasn't exactly easy, but
Can't imagine it was in any way, weather-wise, language-wise. But I mean, you would have several languages at this stage. You obviously
I'm
speak
not
Dutch.
talking about the weather or the language. I'm talking about the cultural background.
Yeah.
And I came from a very different kind of world, that, I mean, things have changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And Ireland is a lot more open than even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a pretty closed society where people always knew who was who, or a cousin or a nephew, or, oh, and I just I came out of the blue.
From anonymity, if you like.
Yeah.
In
And also, I mean, I had a very, very, very old worldly cultural background, which didn't at all fit into Ireland.
That's okay. I sometimes feel I don't fit in either. When you're, I think when you're a creative person, you always feel that sense of that you're looking at the world from the outside. I do anyway. But was it difficult for you being an opera singer, say, coming to Ireland? Because, I mean, there really isn't an opera house, an established opera house in Ireland. Okay, you can talk about Wexford and that, but there's nothing in Dublin. There's certainly nothing in Limerick. I mean, I've always been saying we need some place here in this city where the arts can actually be shown, where dancers can perform, where ballets can happen. Up to the time that Joan Denise Moriarty came to Ireland, we didn't have a ballet company in this city, and ballet was my first love. And and what was it like for an opera singer to come to this country with nothing, no outlet for your music?
Oh, well, I mean, I was established, so I sang abroad. So I would go away for months on end to do productions in America, South America, Europe. But I did quite a number of concerts here, but I never really made much of an effort, I have to say, to integrate into whatever was going on here, because again, that's a very closed world. And I wasn't, to tell you the truth, I wasn't that pushed. I mean, I was, like I said, I mean, I came here, I didn't come here as a 25-year-old, so I was already singing everywhere, and I'd already recorded, I don't know how many albums. And
so the world was your home, really.
Yeah,
the world was your theater.
Yeah, it still is. So
yeah.
Literary wise, it was very interesting, because actually Lyric RTE started to ask me to write stuff about music, and I said, but I don't write in English. By that time I had 5 books out in Dutch, but I'd never written in English. And so I started writing in English, and I never came back from that. I've been writing in English for 24 years now. So, and also, I mean, the literary world in Ireland is obviously top, So
yeah.
It's the best in the world. It's just fantastic.
Well, it is one thing that we're great at, apart from selling our country. I mean, we can even sell our rain. We're remarkable at selling the rain in this country, but we are literary.
So I, through my husband and then through my own work, I met a lot. I have a lot of writer friends, and so that's been very, very interesting.
Yeah, but you're also very involved in training people. Yeah. You have had some really some very, very famous people on your books, as including Hosier.
No, Hosier has never been my pupil.
Has he never been your pupil?
No, he's looked after my cats, but he's never been my pupil.
Oh, I thought he was your pupil.
No.
Hosier was, I was teaching in Mary Immaculate Holocaust studies to youngsters who were training to be primary teachers, and one of them, we were doing all different religions, introducing them to different religions, and one of them, it said, I want to write about the Quakers because Hosier is a Quaker, and he wrote and wrote and wrote to Hosier to try and find out his perspective, and he was devastated when he heard nothing back, because the only reason he was studying about the Quakers, he was going to do his final piece on the Quakers, was Hosier. And he's such a lovely guy. He seems such a lovely guy.
Andrew is very nice. Yes, he used to cat sit. I mean, I know him very well. He's been cat sitting my cats for years in my house. So he stayed in my house when I was away. But I sang for him very often, but I've never coached him.
Really? Yeah, it's just, but I suppose getting back to your dad, what was the impact of realizing that when your dad finally did, and your parents started really talking to you about their experiences? Did you have a good relationship with your parents? Because some of the friends that I've made, Holocaust survivors and children of Holocaust survivors, there's so many different effects that it's had on them. Some of them had great relationships with their parents, like my friend Toba Bramchik. Her dad spoke about it all the time. And she knew her parents, she said, never married for love. They married for companionship, and because they'd lost everybody. Well, he had lost everybody in the Holocaust. But then I have other people that I became friendly with whose parents just completely shut down, didn't talk about it at all, and they had no really strong relationship with their parents. It was completely fractured.
No, I had an extremely good relationship with my parents, but it was not that we talked about, we talked about other things. There were many things to do. We talked a lot about literature and music,
Yeah.
but also my parents were the first people who were members of Amnesty in Holland. They were extremely involved in helping people, so I mean the house was always full of people from all over the world, writers and so on and so on. But yeah, I had a very good relationship with my parents. I mean, they're long dead, My
Yeah.
father is 32 years, my mother 27. So but
Around
yeah,
the same time as my parents.
yeah, it was fine, we was absolutely excellent relationship. We were very independent, but no, we had a very good relationship. Of course, no. I'm only the funny thing is that I'm actually only starting to think now in the last 5 years about the consequences and what actually happened and how my parents, somehow managed to survive, but had lost 164 members of their families, and just wanted to live and have a new family. And, because obviously they started a new family after the war. I have a sister,
Yeah.
half sister, who obviously, because I'm from long after the Second World War, who lived through the war as a child. I mean, obviously it was hell. She was in hiding here and there and everywhere, and but she talked very little about it as well. And only when she got very old, she lives in the south of France, she started telling me about it. But I just think that they actually passed the whole trauma and the whole thought and the whole idea of how do we deal with this onto us, because they didn't talk about it, so we have to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? I feel it's my duty to say, well, do you really understand what happened here? What a genocide and what a war like that can do to, it totally destroyed the whole enlightened Jewish community, European Jewish community. I'm not talking about religious Jews. I'm talking about, Jews who were secular,
Yeah.
but the whole German development, which started with people like Mendelssohn and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was, Walter Benjamin, and there were all the great Gershom Scholem, you name it. I mean, so many. and the whole, if you look at a place like Riga, in Latvia, the whole the city was built by Eisenstein, who was the filmmaker's Eisenstein's father.
Mm.
And the whole intelligentsia, the whole city was Jewish. And they destroyed it within 2 days. They killed 35,000 Jews. So that will never come back. I mean, there is an Israel, but that's a very different thing. That's not the old culture and the old tradition and the old, enlightened kind of Jewish learning that came from the Lernen, from the yeshivas, from the Jewish schools.
Yeah.
That just doesn't exist anymore.
It's just so tragic. But I mean, even when you look at what, the work that came out of places like Theresienstadt,
yeah,
the artwork, the music, I mean, they turned that into what they considered a model camp to try and create this impression to the Red Cross that these are the intelligentsia of the Jewish community, and we're treating them. Look how well we're treating them. But of course, when the Red Cross were gone, everything food was even taken out of the children's mouths as the Red Cross were leaving the camps. It was that bad. And it is so horrific to think of the people, the lives, the works, the creations that could have happened but for all of this insanity. And you don't know whether it's insanity or evil. It's a bit of both, but
well, I would call it a very well organized crime.
Crime that was orchestrated from the very top.
Yes,
and that's the problem, because it was government sanctioned crime.
It was extremely well organized. It has never happened before, and hopefully will never happen again. But yes, I mean, there's 6 million people who could have, some of these people could have obviously been interesting for the rest of the world, but that didn't.
At the very core, there were 6 million human beings whose lives were deemed unworthy.
Yeah.
For some insane reason, I mean, when you think of the likes of Anne Frank, and you think of Peter Ginz, who created so much in Theresienstadt, and at 11 years of age was killed in Auschwitz. I mean, the amount of work that boy, he could have been a journalist, he could have been a writer, he could have been an artist. Nobody would have heard of him but for the fact that his painting was taken by Ilan Raman up to space. And when the space shuttle Columbia exploded, it exploded on what would have been his 75th birthday if he had lived. And thus he was catapulted into our consciousness. But children like that, lives like that, creative people like that, who had so much to give the world.
Yes.
Well, just all snuffed out.
Yeah, exactly.
And for what? And for what purpose? But did you write about it yourself, about being the child of Holocaust survivors?
That's what my book is about.
Yeah, I haven't read your book. I have to confess, I will be reading it.
It's not out yet.
Yeah, so I will be reading it.
I wrote a book about it. It's called The State of Dark, and that's exactly what it's about. It's actually about what war and a genocide does to a culture. It's obviously it's about my family, but it's also to show people what happens if you do that kind of thing, what you destroy, And but no, the book is not out yet, so it should be out in about 8 months.
Yeah, it's a book that really needs to be read. I mean,
it's
imperative.
The most important book I have ever written.
Written, I should say. Yeah. And it's probably the most important, with all due respects, Judith, that you'll ever write in the future, because it's something that is of. How important do you think it is that the Holocaust is taught in all schools? Because I am of the profound belief that there isn't a school in the world that it shouldn't be taught in.
I agree, but a lot of in America, there are 60% of the young people have no idea what it is.
Not a clue.
No.
Not a clue, because, you know, I mean, I was looking at Rob Rinder's documentary the other day on his grandfather's survival of Majdanek, and it was a wonderful documentary, really wonderful. It was last week I was looking at it, or the week before, and the comments underneath from people who had no knowledge whatsoever of this. And I thought, dear God, I mean, this should be known by everybody. But it was because it was Rob Rinder, who happens to be so popular and such a well-known personality now, that he was able to bring people into it. And you had comments like, I never knew this happened, or how could this happen? And you're saying, you know, there's something wrong when it's not been made compulsory, because we have an onus to look to the past to ensure that we do not do this, not just to Jews again, but to any nationality, to any minority group.
I agree.
Because the Jews were the other then.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, but the people in Germany said they had no idea. The people outside the camps, they just showed the first documentary they made about Bergen-Belsen when the English soldiers went there, and they filmed everything, and they filmed the people in the village of Bergen-Belsen, which was idyllic. And they said, no, there's nothing going on. We know nothing about this. I mean, of course they knew.
Of course they knew.
But I mean, the people who stormed the Capitol, you know, there's all sorts of Holocaust deniers. You know, 2 weeks ago, the whole mob, the whole Trump mob who stormed the Capitol, there were a lot of people who had Holocaust didn't exist, you know, so that's still around. Of course.
It's, you know, it is something that I have actually long believed should be taught in schools, and it's difficult here in Ireland, as probably somebody who, probably the only person in the country who's done literature about childhood under Nazism for my PhD. I find, you know, it's not a subject that you can't rock up, say, to a college and say, I lecture in childhood under Nazism or literature about childhood, because there aren't any structured courses really where you can actually lecture on or teach in schools. But you know that as a fundamental course on human rights and on the dignity of life, irrespective of the ethnicity, it's a course that should be taught in schools.
Yes.
To unravel the subject of race and race identity.
Yeah. There's you're right. There's very little understanding here. I mean, I've had very strange reactions of people saying, "Well, do you go back to your family, and how is this?" And then I say, "Well, I have no family," and they would go, "Oh, you know, find it very strange, as if I was a weirdo."
Now, I will say we do here in primary school or second level school, we do study the Holocaust, and we do study World War II, which is more than America or a country like that do. And that's to our great, because when I started studying it, I mean, I found out halfway through my master's that our family believes that my great-great-grandmother was Jewish. Her name was Jacob. She was Welsh, but we believe she married out of her faith. She married a Protestant, and the line changed. And then I became Catholic, or my mother was Catholic, so the line changed. But so there was always this pull towards that subject. I was always interested in it, and but it came from secondary school and from learning it in school. I was always interested in human rights, and I was always interested in childhood, being a dance teacher, and interested in children and children's experiences. Well, I can't understand how it's not a subject that is in every college. There should be a Holocaust department in this country, because we more than any other country, Judith, we went through the famine. We know what it's like to be marginalized and to be persecuted as a nation, to be systematically, if you like, starved. We should have that closeness, that bond with the subject of the Holocaust, more than any nation. There isn't.
No,
it's not. It's not that you don't. You know, it's just.
There's actually quite a bad history of
anti-Semitism.
Minister of Justice not wanting any sending poor Jewish children back before and after the war.
I've written about it, Judith. It's coming out. It's coming out in a book in America.
Taking in German children and putting up a monument for the German children. I mean, I have every sympathy for poor German children.
Absolutely.
But
it was Oliver J. Flanagan.
Yeah, he didn't want any Jewish problems. We've never had a problem, so let's
he said the only thing that the Germans did was to rid itself of the Jews, and until we do the same, it doesn't matter a hair's breadth what we do. Where the bees are, there is the honey, and where the Jews are, there is the money. And that was his maiden speech in the Dáil.
Charming.
And and the sad reality is he won his seat in the Dáil on an anti-Semitic ticket. That was the reality of it at the time. Thankfully, it's not like that today, but there still is a fair amount of anti-Semitism that I don't like.
Of course there is, but that'll always be there.
Do you know? But do you find that being in Ireland in a small community, because the Jewish community is pretty small, do you find that it prevents you from being say mixing outside of the Jewish community, or are you one of these people, because you're a creative person, you're one of these people who can embrace everyone and everything?
I don't move in the Jewish community. I move in the world of classical music, literature, and rock and roll.
Excellent.
I try very much so. I live in a rock and roll. I tour with my stars. You know, before the confinement started, I've been touring 9 months. I was at home for 23 days, so I'm all over the world. It's really,
and you know Glenn Hansard as well. You're very.
Glenn is a very close friend of mine. He was my pupil.
Yeah,
I work with him sometimes, but he's one of my closest friends here in Ireland. He's most generous, wonderful friend, person. He's helped me a tremendous lot.
He's a lovely man. I don't know him. I mean, I'm saying he's a lovely man. I've never met him. But he's one of these men that you think. I remember hearing about him one time going into a fish and chip shop, and some guy said, is it you? And he says, afraid it is. He didn't even say, are you Glenn Hansard? And he said, will you sing a song for me? And he sang inside the fish and chip shop.
That's typical. He's the best of friends, and so is his partner. I mean, they're just very close friends of ours. You know, we spend a lot of time with them in Paris as well. So, I mean, all I can say is, great guy.
What?
A great guy.
A great guy. Yeah, you know, you can see that in his very. He creates this wonderful aura when he's been interviewed. So I'm actually interviewed on RT there a while back, and
he did the Christmas Busk. Yeah.
On
the Late Show, yeah.
No, he did What's His Name's show, the comedian, Tommy Tiernan, and it was absolutely spectacular, because I think Tommy Tiernan's a wonderful interviewer.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's good, but he's also a great performer, you know. I mean, a singer-songwriter, let's not forget that. I mean,
oh, he's amazing. But you know, I mean, I think there was one thing that struck me, is that you said, if you have a talent, you have a duty to serve it. and that you were influenced, I suppose, by Seamus Heaney, who was a good friend of your family. He said, wasn't it he who said you have to have you have to have the talent to have the talent?
Yes, but you know, my father was like the Seamus Heaney of Holland. You know, you forget that I come
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah.
I've been raised in that. You know, I was surrounded by a couple of world famous writers and people. And my father was like the Seamus Heaney of Holland. So I'd say it came from my father. No, I met Seamus much later, and yeah, we were on good terms with he wasn't a close friend of ours.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I knew him through work and so on, and I did a couple of things where I sang and he read and so on, and we were on good terms, but so absolutely loved him, wonderful person.
Do you think like me? I mean, my mother was a trained singer. She was a soprano, nothing like what you're, because when her mother died, she was like me, she was an only child. And when her parents died very young, she just stopped singing. And she was being trained, and music was in our family, you know. But do you think that rock, that there's a correlation there or a similarity between rock singers and opera singers? I'm thinking like when you look at the likes of Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Caballé, when they performed together, I loved it. I loved what they produced. You probably didn't, but I loved.
Fantastic. Freddie Mercury was one of the greatest.
Wasn't he magnificent?
Ever. Oh, love Freddie Mercury. Of course, there is no difference in treating the voice and maintaining the voice. Yeah, there's no different technique. You know, there's only one way of
doing it
and using the technique. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that they need that technique.
Yeah,
that's a different matter. But yeah, it's I don't find it, you know, I coach people for the roles. I work with people in Covent Garden, I work with people in Munich, and I opera singers, and I work with rock stars. It doesn't make any difference to me. Obviously, my world is classical music, and my repertoire goes from Baroque to contemporary music, because I've had a lot of stuff written for me, and I've sung a lot of contemporary music. But to me, it doesn't make any difference. I find it very stimulating and interesting if they're good. I've met Prince. I've met a lot of people that were geniuses, you know.
Wasn't he a genius?
Incredible. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, but wasn't he a genius? Jazz musician as well. When you look at, and people don't recognize Prince as being a jazz musician, but he really was. And his father was a jazz musician.
He was everything. He was a genius. And no, I mean, when musicians are good, they're good. And I don't really care. I've met a lot of folk people as well. I've been moving more because it's so prominent in Ireland, you know, the folk music and the rock music, and the classical music is not prominent at all. And I'm just attracted by everything that is great and new. So I moved towards that angle of the Irish music world, and that's where I am, you know. I perform with them even, and I find that really, really stimulating and inspiring. Not so much, you know.
I thought there was a video I saw a while back, and it was a rock singer. Now he was classically trained, and also Jewish. I think he was brought up actually in Israel, and oh my God, it was, to me, it was the most extraordinary version of The Sound of Silence I will ever hear in my life. And it was the group Disturbed. Now they're heavy metal. I am not a heavy metal. I am no way a heavy metal. I love rock and I love opera, classical. And I see, you know, I mean, but this guy, you really should, if you haven't heard it, you really should hear it. I thought, you probably think I was mad, but I mean, it has been watched more times than any video ever on the internet. I think it's been watched something like 300 million times. And it's been analyzed by vocal coaches all over the world. And they've all said that it is as perfect as you will get his voice. but it's the group Disturbed, and he's the lead singer with it. But it's just, he's a baritone, and it is just magnificent. I just it's breathtaking. I've watched it so many times. I'm in danger of being a stalker.
You can watch it as many times as you like.
Yeah, I just love. I just love when I get a grip on this, on something that really actually I like. I watch. I could watch it endless amounts of times. But Judith, who was the most famous person that you have actually coached? I know you love Bono.
No, I have never coached Bono.
No, but I know you have great respect for Bono as a musician.
Yes, I do. I do. Also, because of my daughter, we were in the same family for 10 years. So I know him, not well, but I know him. Oh, that's because I sang for his birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you said there in a recent interview, hello to Bono, and that you've done such wonderful music.
Yeah, he loves opera, and he's so does The Edge. The Edge
The Edge
promotes a lot of classical music. He's a really interesting person.
Yeah.
The most famous person. Oh my God.
Even though I will confess, I'm not a fan of Bono's, but I'm just his music, yes. Him, no. Personally, because I feel that I love listening to his music. It's
very hard for me. I think it's
hate listening to him preach.
Risky for me to say the most famous person I worked with, because then the others get offended.
Yeah.
I worked with, strangely enough, by a fluke of nature, I worked with Whitney Houston.
Oh.
And but I only worked with her once. She was in a dire state,
Oh, God love her.
But I suppose she was the most famous person I've ever worked with.
But I watched her actually there recently. I watched her very first show on, and the very first time she was on TV, and she truly was special. It was just so hard to imagine. My favorite opera singer that I have never heard singing outside of Ireland would have been Kiri Te Kanawa. I loved her voice.
Yeah, we had the same teacher.
Pardon?
We had the same teacher.
Oh, yeah. I love.
She was Vera Russia, and she was a survivor of a concentration camp.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did. And I also heard your wonderful performance on the balcony.
Oh yeah, but that was
Oh no, but it was lovely.
Did you see any of my YouTube clips?
I've seen one or two of them. We've had problems here for the last couple of days because I told you about my little pet. I was just kind of off the grid for a couple of days. But I saw the one in particular and I sat down and I watched it, and I thought, I wish I could sing like that. I really wish I could actually stand on a balcony and entertain the masses.
I'm actually thinking of starting it again because we're not out of this. And, people get so depressed. So I think I'll do it on Sunday afternoon. I'll start singing again on the balcony.
I just thought, oh, good on you, Judith. I didn't know you. I hadn't spoken to you, but I felt good on you, girl. You're up there and, people would pay a fortune to go to an opera.
It just made people were crying, it made them really happy. And there was something else. There was something going on. And they just don't hear live music anymore. And so I just thought, okay, I'll just sing for an hour, it's tricky because you can't have people, so they have to keep walking and being on the bridge and across the canal, and because the Gardaí was keeping a strict eye on me, because I can't have too many people,
God almighty. Yeah.
Yes,
you should do it maybe every Sunday at a certain time.
That's what I'm going to do again. I did it on Saturday. I did 13 concerts. So, but I'm thinking of doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah, but how is COVID affecting you, Judith? Or is it? Because you're a creative person, are you finding in some strange way that it's producing the creative juices, if you like, because the confinement, to use your words, that you can actually sit down and you can write, or you can think, or you can create?
I can't really sit down that much because I have all my pupils online.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people I have to work with, you know, it's not as if I've stopped working.
But is that easy to do it online?
It's very, very difficult. It's affecting. I was going to do, I have a group with 3 Iranian musicians that I sing with, and I was going to do a big concert in Paris, and it was cancelled 3 days before the concert. It was all going to be filmed by Arte. I was really happy. Nothing.
I was going to France as well, and it was cancelled. I was going over to lecture.
I've been traveling. I'm working on a show actually at the moment with Charlie Chaplin's grandson, James Thierry, who's is a great artist.
Oh, I'd love to interview him. Because Charlie Chaplin is like, I mean, when you look at, you know, he was just such a spectacular performer.
He was the most famous person in the world. But I know his daughter and I know his I mean, you know.
Him and Marcel Marceau.
Oh yeah. But I mean, Chaplin was a lot more famous than Marceau.
Marceau, I know, but I think
James Thierry is an artist. His parents are his father was in a lot of Fellini films, and he's a clown.
Yeah.
And he is a very, very well-known stage artist. He does a combination of movement and so dance, and now he's singing, and it's absolutely fabulous. You should check him out.
I will.
James Thierry. I'll send you the name.
Please. Yeah. Oh God, I'd love to. Yeah.
I mean, he does shows in Sadler's Wells, and he did a couple of shows in the Abbey.
I've been promised by a child of a Holocaust survivors she runs a place in Romania, an education center in Romania. Actually, she'd be somebody that would be profoundly interested in you, because she teaches the Holocaust through creativity, through music, through dance, and she's Penina Zilberman is her name. And she's on Facebook, but she's a remarkable woman. She's from Israel, but she lives in her parents were Romanian Jews, and she works with them. But she said to me that she's going to try and get me Yitzhak Perlman. So fingers crossed, I get Yitzhak Perlman on my shows, because I just love Yitzhak Perlman.
Yes, so do I.
If I can get him. I'd never be that lucky.
I don't know him. Well, I know him as a musician, but I don't know him. I've met him twice, long time ago. We're playing in the Concertgebouw, but no, I can't help you. Sorry.
No, but she's going to, she knows him personally, I think, or she knows somebody who knows him personally. So she said, I'll get Yitzhak for you. I thought my mouth was going to drop when she said it, but yeah, so it was fantastic. But what is the next thing now, I suppose, for Judith Mok, apart from you're going to be giving your concerts from? Did you ever think of getting involved, or are you involved in trying to set up a proper opera house, if you like, or an opera company here in Ireland?
Me?
Yeah, why not?
I'm not an organizer, I'm an artist.
No, but it has to start with somebody.
Yes.
You get the people around you.
That's a lot of work, and I don't do that. I'm terrible at, I don't organize anything. I've always had agents and managers. I don't do that kind of thing. It's enough that I coach and I write and I sing.
Yeah, you're very busy.
I really can't set up an opera.
But getting back, I suppose, getting back to the online, I know from the Irish dancing community, of which I'm strongly involved worldwide. It's difficult, the process of teaching online. I mean, especially when you're teaching dancing as well, because the music isn't always in sync with the steps, and you don't know, is the child out of time, or is the music too slow, or what is it, or is, you know, that must be difficult when you're working with arias and you're working with operettas and operas and that, and you're wondering, are the singers in sync with the music?
Well, no, I mean, obviously I have my 2 books coming out. I have the State of Dark coming out.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I mean, and my book of poetry. I actually have a poem here about Vilnius.
Oh, please would you read it? Absolutely.
And that's about, it's a strange story.
I've actually used a lot of poetry in my book, my own book, and a lot of the poetry was from Micheál O'Sheill. I'm sure you knew Micheál.
I know him well, yeah.
And his book, The Gossamer Walk. Pardon?
He lives in New York now.
It is, yeah, he remarried.
I know. This poem is about the strange thing, you know, there was, you know, they called it the Jerusalem of the North, Vilnius.
Yeah, Vilnius.
And, you know, there were so many synagogues, and there was the main synagogue, which was, of course, flattened and destroyed by the Nazis. And then they, you know, they threw sand over it. And it was built underground because the synagogues were not allowed to stick out.
Yeah.
You know, like literally don't stick out your head too much. So the
don't be obvious.
That the main synagogue in Vilnius, there's a playground built over it.
Yeah.
So there were children playing there now on little, you know, those little doggies and things.
Yeah.
It's extremely strange.
Yeah.
And, no, they completely desiccated the Jewish community there. I mean, that's where and also I'm talking about the Gaon. That was also a very strange thing. They, you know, the enlightened one, he was the most famous Jew philosopher, who was, you know, who was interested in non-Jewish people and non-Jewish philosopher. He wasn't a Hasid. He didn't like the Hasidim, actually. And there is a statue of him, but they were so stingy. There was a big statue of Karl Marx, and they just took a hammer and a chisel and they changed it into a statue of him. Can you imagine? So Karl Marx is now the Gaon, but it's the same the same statue. So it's really absurd.
Do you want to read it for me?
Yes, I do. Playgrounds, Vilnius. Seesaw underneath your statue. We don't know that the new regime pulled on the old mask of Karl Marx to reveal your wise eyes shining through the black stone. We, the children who are condemned to play with the ghosts of those children who walked our homeland's woods, climbing, hanging, our hands slipping through their hands on the bars of the rack, falling flat on the moving ground. A synagogue hidden underneath the sand pit, 3 floors down. Why would we know? Why should we care which religion might bury us? We get onto the merry-go-round and turn to be happy. Our mothers are goddesses of blonde and blue, walking the streets with strange names like Jew Street. And here it is in 2016 that somewhere we heard a war is killing children like us. The big erasers are dropped from planes now. Nothing like Vilnius. History is carved out here in new images, just like the statue of Marx was transformed into you, the Gaon, the enlightened one. When the light drops and the cold catches our breath in clouds, we kick at leaves and sticks in search of a mysterious object, maybe the old bones of a fairy tale, to find nothing.
Judith, that is so wonderful. I mean, have you ever that's really, really beautiful.
Thank
Have you ever experienced, and I'm sure you have as a writer, it's what I hated the most was that blank page, that moment where you the dreaded blank page, I call it, where you look at a blank sheet of paper and you think, how am I actually going to start? Where am I going to start? Or have you ever had that experience where you've had writer's block?
No.
No, I have, you know, I have through my research, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly think of a line, and that would then get me into what I actually found was a quote, and the quote would always get me into my chapters. I always found poetry or Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's quotes. I always found those very, very inspirational. And I always found that you could find, you know, you knew what you were going to write about roughly, but one of his quotes or one of O'Sheill's or Dr. Inga Auerbacher, who wrote I Am a Star, you know, things like that would lead me into, that's the way I approached my chapters. I'd always find something that actually started me off or created me. Do you have a process?
Yes, but I've recently changed it. I like structure, but that's because I'm a classical musician. So
Yeah,
I work like, okay, this and that has to be done. But I've changed that.
I think you said I'm boring and I'm a monster of discipline and seriousness.
I'm incredibly boring. I'm incredibly disciplined, but that comes from.
No, you're not boring. You're a deep thinker. I think you're a deep thinker. And that comes with being a writer and being a creative person as well. You know, there's so much going on in your head.
Yeah, I mean, musicians are also thinkers, you know, they really create, but
creative people.
I suppose I'm just very disciplined. Yeah, I don't think I'm boring. Not really.
No, but that was a quote I actually saw in the what was it that I saw it on? It was on the vocal coach to the stars, Judith Mok, operatic royalty.
Yeah, and in that sense, I'm boring. That I don't drink basically, and
I never drank or smoked, and I've always considered myself boring as hell.
I'm not interested in excesses, let's say. It's just not, I can't, I could never afford to. I mean, either you work at a top level and you keep yourself,
fit. You have to keep yourself fit as well. When you're a singer, you have to keep
exactly.
Because all my friends are singers from Bunratty Castle, and two of my friends actually were trained by Ronnie Dunn, so they'd be. One of them is really singing all the time in the UK, but they're decimated now. Their business has been decimated because of COVID.
I know.
It must be even worse for an opera singer. You can't get to get into a theater. You can't rehearse. You can't do anything.
No.
Awful. I actually saw a while back they brought on 6 members, 6 and 6 from Les Mis and from Phantom of the Opera, and a few more, 2 more West End shows, and they did a small performance. What was it on? It was on some show, and it was so emotional to actually see a small performance with these artists coming out on stage. Can you see it coming back to normal soon?
No. Honestly, no. Also, I mean, that I don't understand. And now the Brazilian strain is here. and they've just let in 1,800 Brazilian students. I don't get it, you know.
They left in 140 Algerian students to Shannon the other day because the Algerian government paid the University of Limerick 10 million. They flew into Shannon, and and they weren't even asked where they were going or to write their names down or anything.
All about money.
They pay apparently
the whole population at risk for 10 million, you know.
But you know, the rest of us are locked up. I mean, I haven't been past 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers since March last year.
I have diabetes, so I'm in the risk group. So I honestly, I can walk. I have to walk my dog, and I have really pretty masks. Look.
Oh, I like that one.
It's nice, no?
Yeah. Is it matching your top?
No.
No, it looks from here.
It matches my coat.
Well, when you see this video, you'll actually realize that it actually looks like it matches your top.
My daughter has designer friends, and I want to support them, and they make masks, so I buy masks off them. But I literally can't go anywhere. I can't go to a shop. I can't do anything. I can't see anybody. I can't do anything.
So you're probably
stand on my roof terrace and sing.
And sing. But you're probably sick and tired now at this stage of Zoom. But the only thing about it is our connection with the outside world. Without it, I think we'd go insane.
Look, again, you know, I mean, I do a lot of work, and I'm very privileged, and I do the work that I like. So, I mean, who am I to complain? There are a lot of people who are absolutely bored to death, and you know, I have books, I have pets, you know, I have company, very interesting company. My husband wrote a long article about children during the Second World War, Jewish children, in the Irish Times.
Okay, I'm going to look that up.
It's called Michael O'Loughlin.
Yeah, his Michael O'Loughlin is your husband.
Yeah. He just does an article, but, well, I can send it to you, but it was a couple of months ago. Please
do. And let me know when your book is actually published, and I'll try and I'll be on to you about what we were talking about beforehand, before we started the interview. Pardon?
Let's not talk about that now.
No, and I'll be on to you about that. But once your book is published, I'll definitely read it. We'll have you on to discuss your book.
Great.
Because
you
know, I have to say, you're a fascinating woman. I mean, from the moment I actually saw you on the balcony, I thought, wow, if only I could do that. Do you know? I mean, I sing. And I was approached a woman here in Limerick. She was a voice trainer. She asked me would I come to her, and I was going to her, but I think I hadn't got the confidence to believe that. I mean, I came from a family of musicians, that I was going to be anyway as good as my mother. And I think when I am somebody who tries to be the best I can at everything. And if I think I'm not going to be good at it, I think, what's the point?
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, I'm never going to be an opera singer. So why would I bother? Do you know?
I know, it is very enjoyable to sing, though. I mean, it's really good for you.
I love singing. I love singing. I'd be a soprano, but it would be what they call an Irish soprano, you know, a lyric soprano. But anyway, thank you so much for being my guest, Judith.
Pleasure. No, I was just looking I thought it started to snow, but it didn't. Look at the canal.
Wow, look at that. Judith, you're right in the heart of the city.
I live, as you can see, I live in a penthouse, so and I always have a lot of flowers.
So where is your stables?
They're no, she's just in.
I say to myself, how does she have a stable? I said, I'm not going to appear stupid.
I don't have stables, no. I wish. Be nice to have stables.
Wouldn't it? What's your horse's name?
Brooke.
Brooke.
Yeah. No, she's my daughter's horse. I mean, we own her, but she's getting older. She's very, very sweet. She's half Arab, and so she's small head. She's very elegant, but she gives paw and kisses.
Oh.
She's very, very gentle. She's like a dog.
You're an animal lover anyway.
Yes, I basically love all animals. I mean, I'm not too fond of scorpions and snakes, but
oh no, I think we can absolutely agree there. I won't even look at images of spiders. Oh, I just have a pet. It's just my hue. I don't fear snakes as much because they're big.
I have scars from spider bite. I was bitten twice by a spider. It's awful.
Where? I mean, not where in your body, but where in the world?
Here.
Here in Ireland.
Yes, they have a spider called the fake black widow, and they live in houses. And because I have 2 roof terraces, and I have trees on them, and they go into plants and trees, and it just bit me in my bedroom. And I had like 5 blisters, and I thought, what is this? And I went to the pharmacy, and they said, look, there's 2 little fangs there. It's spider bite. It took months to go away, and then I had my arm, and my arm was like this.
From Jesus, you never think that there'd be spiders like that in Ireland.
There are poisonous spiders in Ireland.
That's absolutely my biggest fear is spiders. I have no idea why. I won't even look at them. I get angry with people who say, look at this. And I think, oh God, I mean, I hate you. But Judith, you were a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure, and I'll be on to you.
Okay.
I'll be on to you, and let me know when the book is out so that we can actually have a natter about your book.
Of course.
Shalom.
Shalom. Bye.
Bye-bye.